All right, everybody, we have some more tournament footage, and this is going to be from last weekend. We got Duels of Runeterra number 11. We are off of two hands now. We're up to 11. This was for North America, and by my side, the one, the only, Boulevard, not of Broken Dreams. This is not the song. This is my co-caster we're talking about. Always a good time to cast Duels of Runeterra with him. And for round 6 here, we actually had the pleasure of watching Annie Desu take on Mathonical, both of which are no stranger to the top cut. I know I've actually casted Mathonical in the past, and I'm sure many of you have seen or heard of at least Annie Desu. As far as their decks, there will be some links below to check out some of the deck lists on Decks of Runeterra, which is where you can find all of Annie Desu's lists, and Mathonicals will probably be up later on in the week. But something I do want to note for this particular tournament, we have now actually switched to a best of 5. Yes, you heard that right. That is 5 games, and it's a little bit different. There's no bans, so you just have to basically win with all 3 of your decks. The round time limit was actually increased to, I believe, 90 to 100 minutes. So a little bit of a different way of running the tournament this time around. Whether or not that will stick is yet to be seen. It does look like they are changing the format for the next tournament once we have Duels of Runeterra 12, so definitely keep an eye out. But for the time being, we get more games thanks to this format, so I'm not going to complain as a caster. That just means there's more gameplay for us to cast and us to watch. As always, my name is Justin, also known as Shit Just Works. You can always find me casting the latest and greatest tournaments for Legends of Runeterra, whether it be Duels of Runeterra or any of the other events that the community has kind of cooked up as of late. You can find links to all of the different tournament discords in the description below. Just, join the Discord, check it out, say hi. All the rules, all the, the description on how to sign up for the tournaments and what you need to do in order to get involved are going to be in those Discord channels. So definitely check them out. But until the next tournament, we have this awesome footage. So let's get into round 6, Annie Desu versus Mathonical. Everybody, we are here for day 2, and I don't even have 3 seconds. We're just gonna get into this freaking game. I'm here with Boulevard though, and I missed day 1, and I'm really excited for day 2. So let's get into the game.
So we're gonna get started off with Annie Desu versus Mathonical. Annie Desu bringing back his Possession Shadow Isle Ezreal deck. We've seen him on top a couple of Duels of Runeterra in the past with this, and he has decided that that is the way to go about it again, is running the Ezreal Vi with this weird sacrificial early game package. He's got the Cursed Keepers, the Undyings, Ravenous Butchers. Didn't quite go all the way for the Crocklet, but does have Ethereal Remitters in there. And outside of that, the deck has been performing for him consistently over the last couple of tournaments, and I'm interested to see if this is going to be something that continues to pick up in the meta, or if it's just kind of Annie's specialty and no one else ever really touches this deck. But it's going to be interesting to keep track of because it is a cool kind of deviation from the Karina control, which is typically what we're used to seeing out of a Piltover and Zaun Shadow Isle combination.
And bear with me here as I catch up today on everybody's deck lists and the strategies and everything that we're seeing. I can't imagine, and I am curious to hear your thoughts on day 1, obviously. I can't imagine there's too many different, huge differences in the archetypes that we're seeing, but is there anything that you see that stuck out during day 1 that seems like it's boosted a lot from the patch update?
So we did see a little bit of Harrowing Darius decks. That was probably the biggest thing. There was a Nivea Braum deck that I think Lobster and BBG were running. Where it kind of looks like a War Mother's Call, a War Mother's Control deck, but they don't run the War Mother's Call. Instead, it's just Harrowing, but it is just hyper focused on spamming as many Anivias as possible. And it is kind of cool to see that archetype come back. I definitely think Braum was one of the biggest winners from the patch.
Oh my god, I'm so excited. It was unexpected for him to really get a buff too, and although I think everybody could agree he needed one or some sort of change. And oh man, yeah, he just feels so good and so fun to play. One of my first decks I ever played was Braum and Vladimir, so very cool.
Yeah,
to see him get
funny enough, the comment section of my YouTube did not think that Braum needed a buff. They thought he was already perfectly fine where he was, but I was definitely in the boat of I wanted to see Braum get a buff, and being able to get that free Poro on the first instance of damage is absolutely massive.
Yeah, I'm surprised they also gave him attack, to be honest with you. That 3/3 is there is enough, I think. So
it's actually really interesting to see with the Anivia deck, because typically if you're running out a bunch of Anivias, your opponent is just going to throw up the chump blockers in front of them, and their board's going to get wiped, but they let the blocks off anyway. But the Mighty Poro actually gets around that and still gets to push through the damage thanks to the Overwhelm. So I really like how the Brahmin Anivia package seems to line up well together in the current format.
Everybody just bear with me here as I update this match score to the correct 0-0, as it was at 1-1, because we are in game 1 right now of AnnieDesu versus Mathonical.
Yeah, unfortunately, Mathonical not bringing that Harrowing Darius, is just going for a little bit more of a streamlined Noxus Spider deck, keeping the curve really low, not going for the crowd favorite. Not going for the crowd favorites or the Brood Awakenings, just keeping it nice and low with the Elise Callista. Nothing in this deck costs more than 3 mana unless it's dealing forward to his opponent's face. But AnnieDesu doing a good job so far of hanging on with this Pilfer deck. And I know that is a deck that a lot of people wanted to see get hurt really, really badly, and I'm not convinced that the changes they made were super impactful.
You don't want to get me started on the Pilfer deck. You do not want to get me started. I really don't think it matters that Black Market Merchant has 1 health now, but hey, I'll give Riot the benefit of the doubt. They've done a pretty damn good job so far, so we'll see how this all shakes out throughout this tournament. Have you seen a lot of Pilfer decks have some success in day 1 so far?
Oh, absolutely. The consistency of the deck and the play rate of it really hasn't gone down. Annie, though, is running sort of a substandard version of it, much, much heavier into the Freljord side of things, packing Wolf Riders, Starlight Seers, Ruthless Raiders, Omen Hawks, even 1 copy of Tusk Raider, and instead has cut down on the Riptide Rex, which is the card that usually gives you sort of the worst Sea Monster matchup. Doesn't pair well into these big boards. Instead, Annie going a little more all-in on the Twisted Fate, cutting the MF, and running things like 3 copies of Salvage, really trying to play to this win condition that people might not be expecting as much.
And we see here Annie with the buffed up Twisted Fate, choosing the red card. Seems pretty good here. He'll also have the Make It Rain to follow up and eventually kill this Callista, which I do think is a pretty big deal here. I actually haven't really had a chance to take a look at Mathonical's deck list, but I do like this build. I know it's playing 3 Decimate as well as 3 Noxie and Fervor, so this is definitely a very aggressive version of this deck. Have you seen this deck a lot in day 1? Is this something that's come more to the forefront of the meta?
So it's something that's been picking up a lot of popularity lately, sort of to round out the 3rd deck in an aggro lineup. The problem is that, especially with 3 aggro lineups right now, is you can't pick on the Heimer Vi like you used to be able to. Your opponent does have 1 more chance to pick up that the only win that they need with the deck in order to get it off the table and sort of get you out of there. We've seen a couple of Noxus Spiders decks, and I still call this Noxus Spiders, like I still call Indoor decks Indoor Spiders.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Let me rephrase. There's not a lot of spiders in here.
Nope.
It's really just Elise and Precious Pet. We're not seeing Arachnoid Sentries and Skitterers and things of that nature anymore. But yeah, we've seen a couple of decks like this. It's picking up a little bit of popularity. I don't know if people like Mathonical think this is just strictly better than the Harrowing Darius deck, which from what I've seen, at least the version that Hyped was running, was mono Noxus outside of 3 Harrowing and a single Atrocity. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to look at deck lists like that, but this one is a lot more Shadow Isle heavy.
Yeah, and even this Twisted Fate Sejuani deck is definitely a little bit different from what I'm used to. I do love the Tusk Raider as a card in general. I'm curious to see if he is able to get it off this game. I think it's such an underrated card. I personally like playing it in the Swain Sejuani decks. I thought it was great. But we see here that he's taken a while to really decide what he's going to do here, using that Oracle's Eye, which we all know and love. The Omen Hawk, it looks like it's going to go ahead and block the 2-1. I think he's just thinking about whether or not to take the 5 damage from the Callista, which honestly is it's a tough decision against this aggressive deck on the side of Mathonical.
So I think he's debating the block with the Omen Hawk, because if he doesn't block anything and goes for an open attack on the next turn, if Mathonical plays nothing, then he's guaranteed to at least get through the damage with the Omen Hawk. It's pretty unlikely that Callista would block it. And then he has 5 potential draws in hand between, this Black Market Merchant, the Salvage, the Pilfered Goods.
Oh, you mean that Pilfered's Good card is still pretty good, you say? Oh, I didn't realize that. Oh, geez, okay.
Twisted Fate, is halfway leveled, so AnnieDesu actually just has to fire off the Twisted Fates pick a card, can pass the turn, and then we'll have a leveled TF going into the following turn. Does make things a little bit awkward, though, as Mathonical will have quite some time to set up the board, go as wide as possible. It's possible that AnnieDesu isn't going to be able to get a whole lot done, even with the leveled Twisted Fate, this low on life and this low on resources.
Yeah, and I'm expecting... I mean, at this point, Mathonical has to figure out a way to get this Twisted Fate off the board, or I think he just loses the game. And he's pretty reliant, I think, on a Noxie and Fervor would be one of the only ways he's able to get rid of that right now.
Yeah, AnnieDesu picking up this second Pilfered Goods, though, does mean that he has the burst speed capabilities to level up this Twisted Fate and turn it into a 4/4.
Oh, yes, he just got another one. Yep, so he's golden no matter what. So this is going to be a rough spot for Mathonical, and I don't really think he's going to have the ability to come back from a level Twisted Fate. That's just wait. I don't think any deck really has the ability to come back from a level Twisted Fate. I've definitely never seen it happen that often. This is another way that he can get rid of it by challenging it with the saplings here, but again, like you said, he's got those burst Pilfered Goods, and it looks like that's what we're going to see right here.
Yeah, he's going to fire off the one. That's going to level the Twisted Fate. It's very important that he gets this leveled before he does throw down the Sejuani so that he can sort of start the card train. Because AnnieDesu's hand is really awkward to play with this level Twisted Fate. If he had a warning shot, you know, he'd be absolutely popping off right now. Unfortunately, doesn't have that and is going to be pretty low on mana once the Sejuani comes down. Only going to have 4 left thanks to the blue card.
Now, why do you think, and I might be missing something here, but why do you think he didn't decide to go with the Black Market Merchant first there?
He hasn't damaged his opponent.
Oh, he hasn't plundered yet. Okay. All right. Gotcha.
That would just come down as a 2-1. It'd be a little bit awkward.
Yeah, I was like, okay, wait, this doesn't make sense. But okay, cool. So, yeah, I think Sejuani here, I don't know. Sejuani feels like it's pretty bad here. I think he just really wants to try to maintain the board as much as possible. So he's going to start getting all these, this blue card, the red card, the gold card off. Red card is just so good for him right now. And the gold card. The gold card is going to go ahead and stun this Callista here. So at this point, like I said before, I mean, once this Twisted is leveled, I don't really see Mathonical being able to do anything to not just get it off the board, but to really come back and do that final 8 damage. Unless he's got like 2 Decimates. If he has 2 Decimates in hand, then you know what? More power to him.
I was actually a little surprised to see Annie not go for the Sejuani, instead firing off the Twisted Fates pick a card. This does still limit his plays for the turn. He does have the option to, you know, play this Demolitionist and maybe a Transfusion after, but there's only 1 card left in Twisted Fate's deck. And it doesn't look like he does want to stun this Callista before he actually goes to combat, thinking about, you know, if this Demolitionist comes down, I have to play it onto my Twisted Fate. Looks like he is going to go for the Wolf Rider again, or instead, rather, or considering the Black Market Merchant.
Well, and one of the reasons I think he wanted to save that Sejuani, because I know you were saying you were thinking he was going to play it this turn. I think he wants to use it more aggressively and probably just ensure that he can remove that Callista maybe on the following turn, make it vulnerable, challenge it. That's my thought process anyways. I don't know if that's what he's looking to do on his following turn, but it seems to me that, I mean, that pretty much just seals the deal for him here with this game. Not that the level Twisted, you know, it doesn't seal the deal for him.
Yeah, it looks like Mathonical is having this very unfortunate thing that happens sometimes to players where the cards in their hand are very, very scary. And once they actually put them on the table, they become a lot less scary. That said, AnnieDesu is actually in a bit of a pickle here as the second Blighted Caretaker comes down. Does mean Mathonical is representing a lot of face damage and stealing the Decimate off the bottom. It's so much less fun to cast Nab taking things off the bottom because it's like, oh, he stole the top deck Decimate. But no, that was a bottom deck Decimate. We were never going to see this come out.
Wow, so he wins just having all of this in his hand. That's crazy. So he was actually able to burst down AnnieDesu before the Twisted Fate really was able to generate any value to matter. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if your hand is empty if you're winning the game. And
yeah, that's second Blighted Caretaker doing a phenomenal amount of work here.
Yeah, I want to actually say that Blighted Caretaker, did it win him the game? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh wait, no. Okay, so he's off by 1 right now. Okay,
but Annie does lose the Twisted Fate.
Yes,
has the opportunity to draw another one. I'm not sure if he even remembers, but he is actually drawing 4 cards on the following turn thanks to the Twisted Fates pick a card that he fired off a little bit earlier.
4, 5, 6, 7. Wait, oh yeah, so he's actually going to overdraw by 1 right now.
Yeah.
Oof, and you know, there's a lot of outs for Mathonical to draw to just win him the game. I mean, he does thankfully have one of the Decimates off the bottom, so that was actually probably a pretty key draw for AnnieDesu. But from looking at his deck list, it doesn't look like he has any way to heal. So right now he's got 1 life and 1 life only, and that's all he's working with. So if he can't like just basically remove the entire board, I don't see him living past next turn. And I mean, he definitely has the tools to do it. This Sejuani will come in handy. It'll remove something. The Callista's no longer there, so I imagine the Bark Beast. Trying to think. How far is that Sejuani from leveling as well? Do we know?
We do not. I assume it's pretty far, maybe 3 out of 5 at the most. Looks like
4
that's
to
at
5.
4 out of 5.
Okay.
Actually. Okay, so that's a little more impactful.
That's very good because now, depending on if that's a follower or a champion in Mathonical's hand, he should be able... Okay, so it is a follower. So with this Make It Rain, he should be able to trigger it next turn as well. The issue is it's going to be a pretty big deal for him to draw something like another warning shot possibly to get the level Sejuani's effect off so he can frostbite the entire field. He might also just have enough followers right now to block if he plays everything out in his hand.
Yeah, I think that's what Annie's going for. I think he wants to play this Pilfered Goods this turn, but understands that he's not going to be able to. He does need to get down as many followers as possible. Probably going to see the Omen Hawk come down alongside of this. And while the Make It Rain is going to clean up either the Precious Pet or the Blighted Caretaker, certainly, you know, it's not really... Saving the 1 spell mana by not playing the Omen Hawk isn't really what you want to be doing, and AnnieDesu can line up the attacks beautifully, pushing through as much damage as possible, with letting that take care, letting the Demolitionist rather take care of the Elise.
Yeah, and this Make It Rain will be huge. So right now, I think Mathonical is just needing to top deck into a Decimate, and we know we have one in our hand, and oh, he top decks the Decimate. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, AnnieDesu. I shouldn't have said anything. Holy crap, that feels bad. Oh, and you can see the half-hearted smile on AnnieDesu's side. He's just like, man, I knew it. And you know, it sucks even more too because he actually yoinked one of them already. So you knew he had a lower probability of drawing it, and he was still able to get it off the top.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to like. I always, you know, probability's hard, man. I'm not gonna lie. I never try to bring it up because I don't really have the ability to think on the fly and kind of back up the stats that I'm spouting out. But drawing from the bottom, I'm not sure how that. I know it doesn't realistically affect the probability, but it's so weird to try and talk about.
Well, I guess the other thing too is like we don't actually know when the deck is shuffled in this game, or I guess you kind of do. Like if so, here's a good question: when you play a Pilfered Goods and you pick the card, is the deck shuffled after that? Are we assuming it is or it isn't?
I'm assuming it isn't.
I'm assuming it isn't too, because it's specifically off the bottom. But
yeah.
But you got to think, it's how is the algorithm designed in the game? Like what card effects actually trigger a quote unquote shuffle, you know?
Yeah, I'm never sure. Like if I toss a couple of cards, when the game starts, is my deck order set, or are you just constantly RNGing a card for me to draw each turn?
Yeah.
And RNGing things off the bottom of my deck kind of thing.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly how that works. I imagine it's different between Hearthstone and this game and other games, but yeah, no, that is a good point though. When you are drawing it off the bottom, it technically is not making a difference, kind of, sorta, but isn't. So I know what you mean. Math is hard, like Sumo says. Math is hard.
Yeah, so it looks like AnnieDesu swapping over to the Noxus Elusives, probably going to get the most ideal matchup, getting the Weiheimer instead of the Pilfer out of Mathonical. And I'm not super sold on the power level of this Noxus Elusives. I've run into it on ladder quite a few times. I've never had a major problem with it. It definitely doesn't feel as powerful as the Noxus Piltover Zon burn that we had with, 4 health Boom Crew Rookie and 2 health Legion Rearguard. But it's definitely popping up in tournaments a little bit more often lately, sort of replacing the old school Freljord Ionia Elusives. But it does feel like it, plays weirdly into a lot of lineups. It takes sort of these 2 power regions off the table and really kind of I don't know. I feel really weird about how the lineup plays out when you add a deck like this in.
I personally like the deck. I like it better than typical burn because it's a more combo oriented strategy. Like, I don't know, me personally, I think it feels pretty good to consistently bounce an Imperial Demolitionist and just get like multiple triggers off a Crimson Disciple. You're just like, oh, you thought this was my only 4 damage combo. Well, think again. I have Solitary Monk in my hand.
Yeah, the combo potential in this deck is definitely higher than anything we've seen in the past. And I was kind of hoping for some kind of hit to the Disciple Demolitionist combo specifically in patch 1.4. Didn't get it. Maybe next time. And maybe next time we'll see Weiheimer finally get knocked down a peg as well. But
Oh, Heimer, the other card that everybody was very disappointed was not changed whatsoever. Still, by far, in my opinion, the strongest champion in the game.
Yeah, did you actually did you see the tweet from Riot about why they didn't nerf Heimer Vi?
No. Oh, enlighten me. This should be good.
Oh, so it was interesting. So obviously they have a threshold of if a deck is above this win rate, then it's a problem and we have to nerf it.
Yeah.
Turns out Heimer Vi is above that threshold, but only in Masters.
Really?
And in Platinum Diamond, it does have an above average win rate, but it is not an oppressive win rate. So what they're trying to do is figuring out how to balance this very high skill ceiling deck where, you know, obviously if you're a good player, they don't want to nerf decks that are only good if you're a good player. They want to reward you for being a good player. The problem is there's a lot of good players.
Yeah. And yeah, I think that's the issue. Well, and you got to think too, because this game is relatively new, there is a smaller player pool. So that might be why there's quote unquote more good players, right? And once this game becomes, you know, more public to the masses and stuff, and a lot more people pick it up, that won't be the case. So that I could actually understand. I could understand that reasoning. It's one of the reasons why I do love Riot when they make these changes, because they're very upfront with why they do things and why they don't do things. So we'll see if that matters. I do think it is a very high skill ceiling deck. I've played it myself. It's definitely a difficult deck to pilot when compared to something like, I don't know, Burn. So we'll see if Mathonical can pilot it here and end up taking the win 2-0.
Yeah, and speaking of Mathonical, already kind of on the ropes, AnnieDesu does have him down to 6 life already. Thinking about this Noxian Fervor to get his Demolitionist out of the way of the Vi and push through the extra damage. But AnnieDesu not having a whole lot of gas left in the tank. That Solitary Monk is going to stonewall the Shadow Assassin, but he does have a wide enough board if he doesn't go for this Noxian Fervor and gets the Shadow Assassin down now. You know, the amount of attackers versus the amount of blockers just not lining up for Mathonical, who's also running relatively low on cards himself. And there, you know, there's a couple of things that Mathonical can have to get him out of this situation. A static shock onto the 2 1-health units would be a phenomenal start back into this game. With 6-7 mana to play with, looks like it's going to be 7 mana to play with. He's got more than enough. Never mind. Estimate off the top. Throw everything I said out the window. You need to deny or you're dead, Buckaroo.
Wow, and yeah, apparently everybody just feels like top decking decimates today. Can we get a Captain Farron played now that it's also been reworked? I want to see myself a lot of decimates today.
Yeah, this is a I think we've already seen more decimates right now than I saw all of yesterday.
Yeah, okay. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, and Annie will probably be able to take this. I imagine he'll be able to negate this entire attack, Mathonical. But like you said, if he doesn't have a deny, he's pretty much shit out of luck. I'd be surprised if he lets his 2 damage through, to be honest with you.
Yeah, lining up onto the Demolitionist instead of the Navori Blade Scout does make me think he has to have something. Otherwise, I can't think of a reason you wouldn't leave the 1-health unit around. Maybe he's thinking about the combo potential of the deck, the Navori Conspirators and the Solitary Monks. Which one does he not want bounced? And at 6 life, I definitely think I care more about that Demolitionist getting bounced than I do a Navori Blade Scout.
Oh yeah, 100%. And we'll see what he plays here. I mean, we do know that Annie, with what he's got in his hand, he's got game. It's just a matter of, you know, him waiting for his opponent to play things first and expend mana first. And yeah, this is gonna feel pretty bad for Mathonical taking 2 additional damage here. This Decimate will just win if he plays underneath 4 mana.
And Annie has a difficult decision to make. Knows that this Decimate is his ticket to victory.
Oh yeah.
Is there a deny in his opponent? Let me check how many denies are in the deck, because
there are 2.
Prismatis has completely cut deny from his Karma Ezreal yesterday.
Oh,
and
wow. Okay.
I was like, I can't even talk about, like, you know, my mind instinctually talks about the deny possibilities, and this man just threw it out the window, said, I don't need this card.
Wow, I don't know if I agree with that. That's kind of ballsy. I mean, I would have, yeah, I don't know if I would have done that, just knowing that you don't have a guaranteed victory there. That's kind of rough to play that. And you didn't toss your 3 damage out the window, you tossed your 4 damage out the window, which was what you needed for victory. And now he's in a spot where, wow. Okay, well, he does prevent the lifesteal.
Yeah, that's Fervor. Noxian Fervor is so good for plays like this specifically, being able to deny the lifesteal of really any unit, but specifically when a massive Vi gets Spirit's Refuge, and of course Dead Bloom Wanderers and things of that nature in the Sea Monster matchup. Playing out really well for AnnieDesu, and if there's no elusive unit coming out of Mathonical, this Shadow Assassin is likely just going to end the game alongside this Green Glade duo.
Yeah, and you nailed it with Noxian Fervor. That's why I love that card so much. It's like it did not just do 3 damage there. It did 11 damage technically. Just from stopping that 8 lifesteal that would have happened and healed Mathonical's Nexus, and that's just incredible.
Heimer coming out, that is a little bit scary. It does mean that AnnieDesu has to go for the open attack. If there's something like a Get Excited into an elusive turret,
Ooh,
of course
I
wouldn't
think
have the
that's game.
opportunity to play it. But this should just be lethal.
Yeah, that transfusion. Oh, wait, actually, yeah, no, he's got burst speed.
The burst speed lethal with the transfusion and the Disciple.
I was like, wait, now he can save his elusive unit when he attacks. Oh no, wait, there's this combo that happens no matter what. Never mind.
Yeah, I think the burst speed lethal potential out of Crimson Disciple. It's weird because this card is so mediocre in a lot of Vladimir decks, and the whole Crimson package was sort of made to complement the Vladimir, and we just see it come out as such a powerful burn tool. And I'm curious if it's gotten a little bit out of hand from Riot's initial design space, if this is a little bit not the direction that they thought the card was going to go, if they do need to tweak it a little bit, because personally I don't love the current state of the Crimson package. We don't even typically see it all that often in Vladimir decks, like the Hecarim Vladimir that we see the Black Boss have so much success with. I think there was somebody who brought it this weekend, and it wasn't the Black Boss. Specifically, the Black Boss is not running his Hecarim Vladimir special.
Wait, sorry, say it. Black Boss he's running a Vladimir deck?
No, so Black Boss has topped like the last 3 or 4 tournaments with a Hecarim Vladimir deck, and he is not running it this weekend.
Is that the one that me and you actually casted a while back? Didn't we
I believe so.
Yeah, okay. Oh man, I really hope we get to cast him then, because I really want Vladimir and Hecarim to just like be good cards. Like I really am happy with their card design, but for some reason we just haven't really seen them fit into that like S tier competitive deck, and I'm just waiting for one person to just unlock their true potential.
They've been picking up in popularity. I don't know how much you've been paying attention to the tournament results specifically, but I believe it was either Yang Zera or X Yatsuba. The Y names always confuse me. One of them picked up the win at BR Fest #2 with that Vladimir Hecarim deck in their lineup.
Oh, nice. Okay, that's what I like to see. Was it?
So we're getting closer.
Harrowing?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is why I was surprised to see Black Boss not running it. Harrowing did just pick up a buff, and instead he was like, I'm done. I'm putting the deck down for now.
Yeah. All right, so we have AnnieDesu back to the Twisted Fate Sejuani deck, and it's going to be up against the Vi Heimer. So let's see if it looks like he's playing the aggressive route very early on here, and it looks like he's going to be rewarded for it just with kind of the way his hand is playing out. He also curves into the Wolf Rider pretty nicely early on here, so an early Sejuani will surely help him out here in the early game as well.
Yeah, AnnieDesu taking a much more aggressive route. I am a little confused, if we're being honest, by the presence of the Wolf Riders in this deck. Typically, they came out in very, very early versions of the Pilfer deck to accelerate you into those Riptide Rex turns. But AnnieDesu is only playing 1 copy of Riptide Rex and 1 copy of Tusk Raider. Those are the only things in his deck that cost more than 4 mana outside of Sejuani. And since he's not going to have the attack token on turn 4, he's actually not even going to accelerate into the Sejuani turn. It's still going to come out at the same pace that it normally would. And I'm curious to see if the Wolf Riders are really only in here for the overwhelm.
Yeah, that is a good point. I think that's what a lot of people miss sometimes is, when you have the attack token, is it odds or evens? And that matters a lot, especially with how your deck is built. Like you were just explaining with, depending on the cost of your cards, 4 cost. Tusk Raider specifically is a 4 cost card, meaning that he won't be able to play on his attack turn, like you said. So definitely some important stuff for AnnieDesu to consider here. And it does still seem like he's very much in control here, though. So if Mathonical isn't able to play something down to kind of stop the bleeding a little bit, he might get into a little bit of trouble here.
Yeah, Heimerdinger Vi susceptible to the aggro as always. That's kind of why the Spirit Refuges are in the deck. It's like, well, I can't stop the early aggro, but if I can just gain 10 life a little bit later on, then we're kind of chilling, and there aren't going to be any Noxian Fervor tricks coming in at AnnieDesu this time around. The Solitary Monk, wow. I don't think that's a good pickup. Maybe a little bit later on if we can see AnnieDesu kind of fire off a couple of black market merchants and recycle them, but I think it's going to be a while before we actually see this card come down. Yeah,
I think his board's a little bit too wide to be able to get this Solitary Monk down. He's actually going to lose more momentum than anything. We do see that he is activating the Jagged Butcher as well as the Wolf Rider. So, oh boy. Trying to think of what Mathonical can have to get him out of this situation, and I do not think there is much at this point.
Yeah, it's almost certainly going to have to be a couple of removal spells strung together. Everything on AnnieDesu's board isn't representing a whole lot in the way of attack, but Shadow Assassin is not going to pair well into anything that AnnieDesu is doing, and Mathonical very much on the back foot in this matchup. Could be falling just a little bit too low. Even if he does go down to 1, then he is in danger of that Twisted Fate red card picking up the victory here for Annie, pushing us into game number 4.
Yeah, wow, that sounds so weird. That sounds game 4.
It was so weird yesterday when I was casting, and I was like, that is it for game number 3, and now we're going into game 4.
That is so weird, man. Oh my god. I was gonna ask you too, like, all right, hold on, before we finish this game out, this is 5 games, right? I just want to make sure I'm not like dreaming.
Yeah, this is 5 games. Yeah, it is no ban, bring 3 decks. We have to watch these players play their Heimer Vise and their Karma Ezreals and pick up their free wins.
Now, and you still can't play both a deck twice, right?
You can. I mean, if you lose with it, you can play it again.
Well, yeah, but you can't win with it.
Yeah,
twice.
Once you play it, you still, or once you win with it, rather, you still put it down.
Okay, cool. So no, just playing, Heimer Vi 5 times in a row. Okay.
No, nothing like that.
So
just like that, it's gonna leave Mathonical at 2.
Yeah. That was quick. So now, I mean, he's going into a turn where, this is where it's hard as a Heimer Vi player, is you need to get, like, if he has a Heimer or a Vi in hand, he almost needs to get it down, but he's so far behind in tempo that it's almost worse for him to have to expend that 5 mana on a Heimer. So it's really tricky to actually figure out what to drop down on the board right now.
So I think what Annie Desu is going for here is he's going to play the Twisted Fate, red card the board, then play the Solitary Monk, which will get back the Yordle Grifter that he can play next turn for a warning shot for lethal.
Yeah, I think he's got multiple ways he can get lethal off here. That's, honestly, I would love to see a Solitary, or like even a Twisted into a Solitary Monk, 2 red cards, this is a lot of things.
I think he's hovering around the Grifter because he knows that the red card is deniable, doesn't want to open up that option. That is how he lost the previous game, or not lost the previous game, but came close to losing. It got a little dicey with the Decimate deny.
Yeah, how do I avoid deny? Well, I just focus on winning with burst spells now.
Of course, Annie doesn't have... That's kind of like a cheeky little combo it looks like he's considering. Doesn't have to go for that by any means. If he just Sejuani's this, then I think he's got a wide enough board to just pick up the W on the next turn.
Yeah, I think that's right. I did see him hovering the Ruthless Raider, too. It's a little odd to me that he decided to go with that instead of the Vi, just because the Vi will be able to pick something off and kill it, whereas the Sejuani would have completely nulled the attack and given him another large unit with Overwhelm. I mean, I guess either way, like you said, there is going to be a lot of damage coming through, but I feel like the Sejuani was a little bit more guaranteed. Yeah,
it looks like he wants to get the Twisted Fate down this turn, just doesn't really care about getting the Solitary Monk down in the same turn. Is going to have the option to play that on the following turn and still, once again, play that Yordle Grifter, get that warning shot, or play down the Twisted Fate and get the red card. Either way, I'm pretty sure Annie Desu's got this one in the bag.
Oh, yeah, yep. I got to agree with you there. I think the red card's coming down next, so... Game 4. I'm still trying to mull that over in my head and just like be okay with that. How has your experience been with day 1 so far of doing 5 games? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad?
I feel like more often than not, we were just seeing players sort of handshake, pick up their initial victories with their decks that would have been banned out anyway. And by the time that they finished doing that, I'm not sure that we had more time left over than we did for the time limits in best of 3. So it felt like it was just kind of a wasted potential 90% of the time. Obviously, it's really cool when you do get to pick up a win, like we're going to see here against the Heimer Vi, or these decks that you always consider an auto ban. And was that a blue card out of the Twisted Fate?
Yeah, actually. I mean, I don't think it matters.
Yeah, I don't think it matters. I would have liked to see the cheeky win, but you're right. It doesn't really matter. But overall, I'm not... I definitely think I'm not a fan of the current best of 5 format. I think best of 3 was a little bit, nicer. I'm not sure how I feel about the bans not being there either. I'm not the biggest fan of the European format that we're running either, but that's why I'm casting and not playing. The format doesn't make too much of a difference to me from this perspective.
As long as we get to see some cool gameplay, I don't really care how many games they're playing.
You can play best of 10 if you really want to. I don't have a lot to do.
You got all the time in the world over here. We're fine. All right. How much math does it take to do 2 damage? And it looks like we figured it out. So Annie Desu is going up 2-1. And I am on top of the match scores today. We putting this match score up there. So AnnieDesu up 2-1. If he wins the next game, he wins the set of now 5 games, and it looks like we're not going to see his Vi deck, so this should be...
Yeah, so Mathonical can either go back to the Heimer Vi or switch back to his own Pilfer deck. His a lot more standard, only playing, a very small amount of Freljord cards, just the Sejuani, Omen Hawk, Fury of the North, and then going for the, much more standard Yordle Grifter, Citrus Courier, Riptide Rex sort of win condition. Though there is a Jawl Hunters, and he did decide to take advantage of the newly buffed Petty Officer.
Is he playing? He's playing Heimer Vi again, right?
Yeah, that seems to be the case, and I'm not sure that the Heimer Vi... generally, I feel like Heimer Vi is favored in Ezreal matchups because, you're playing so few units until you're really overwhelming your opponent, and because all of your cards represent 2 cards with the Heimerdinger, all of your opponents only represent 1, you play so many defensive spells. Typically, I feel like the Heimer Vi, if it's against something like a Karma Ezreal, is just going to be able to beat that deck out no problem. But AnnieDesu running the Shadow Isle Ezreal, and while it is still an Ezreal deck, he has this extremely aggressive sacrificial package. We see the Cursed Keeper and the Ravenous Butcher in the opening hand, and AnnieDesu has the attack token on too. That's just 7 damage coming at Mathonical to start the game off. And there aren't any 2-drops in this Heimer Vi deck outside of Claw the Dragon, who does have the opportunity to play one of those as a blocker onto the Escaped Abomination thanks to the reduced health of it.
Well, yeah, and that's, again, I think he's just playing to his strengths here, right? AnnieDesu, he's recognizing that, okay, I'm up against the Heimer Vi, I'm going to mulligan for a really strong hand in the first few turns here, and if he's able to do, exactly what you're just saying, he's going to get this Ravenous Butcher down, he's going to get a 4-4, he's going to get the 3-2 to attack, like you said, 7 damage right off the bat. If he's able to continue to do this and then get this Chronicler of Ruin off at some point on maybe another, Cursed Keeper, yeah, I'm hard-pressed to see how Mathonical is really able to stay in this, and that's a big change right there. That is that instantly shows you why that patch made a difference with Abomination.
So I had done my patch rundown video, and then I went and I played ladder for like 2 hours, and I didn't touch on it at all in my patch prediction kind of stuff. But as soon as I played ladder for 2 hours, I was like, how are they going to nerf Cursed Keeper? This card's kind of a problem.
Yeah, well, I think that answers your question, and I think a lot of people I don't think realize truly how important 1 health is or 1 attack is. Like, making it seems like such a minor change, but in my eyes it put it on par with like Grizzled Ranger and Loyal Badger Bear. It made it more comparable to that pair. But yeah, I think that just shows right there. Thermo Beam is a very stat check card, I gotta say, because it also had to do with what's the other one, Legion Rearguard. Rearguard, same reason why that was a big nerf was because of Thermogenic Beam. Now Thermogenic Beam can kill it on turn 1.
Yeah, and we're gonna see this Spirit's Refuge. For some reason I keep calling this card Spirit Visage, which is the healing item in League of Legends, but not this card. This card is Spirit's Refuge. Actually gonna work out for him this time, getting him up to a pretty healthy life total. But AnnieDesu, this is kind of a matchup where he gets to play towards this Undying package, really start to overwhelm his opponent with those, because the Heimerdinger, it doesn't have the bodies to typically be able to consistently block these out. And the Vi is gonna do a good job of starting to clean up the board, but AnnieDesu has a Vi of his own.
Well, and I gotta say, when AnnieDesu drew the first Undying, he seemed extremely happy. Like, he was very happy that he drew it, and honestly, I could see why. Being able to get 2 on the board already, he has another one in his hand, and he has that critical 1 Ruination that he's playing, which, like, let's say Mathonical gets a board of Heimer with some turrets built up, you could say bye-bye to the board and hello to a nice newly buffed Undying board. So that will be a hell of a swing turn if we get to that.
Yeah, things playing out pretty well so far for AnnieDesu in the early game. Does have to take care of the Solitary Monk soon, though, and I'm a little surprised that Solitary Monk is a card that has sort of gone unchecked by the Riot Balance team for as long as it has. It's become a very versatile card. It's played in a lot of control decks, and now that it's starting to see play in a lot of aggro decks as well, I'm curious to see if the card has become a little bit too versatile. Might have to check back on that one in patch 1.6.
Yeah, it's kind of like Navori Conspirator. Navori Conspirator was very similar to it, and then they kind of toned it back a little bit, bringing it down to 2 attack instead of 3 attack. So I would imagine it goes to maybe 3 attack at some point. But yeah, I agree 100%. It's in a whole slew of decks. I will say, with the Undying, it always feels so good. AnnieDesu's got the Undying on the field. He's got this whole, okay, I'm just going to be able to attack a ton every single turn. But that can't block, man. It's just so, like, it's so killer. Like, you don't think about it, I feel, when you play the Undying. All you think about is all the upside that the card has. And then when it's your opponent's turn, you're like, oh, shit. now I can't block.
That when I was playing around with Hecarim decks and Kalista decks, like, I would have this massive, like, 6-unit attack, and then after the attack step, I have 2 units left, and I'm like, oh, hold on. Where did all my blockers go? And Undying's kind of the same thing. You look at this 4-unit board of AnnieDesu lining up into the 2-unit board of Mathonical, and it's like, okay, well, you know, this is great. I have more units than he does. But once it's his attack turn, you're actually down to only 2 units yourself.
Yeah, and it starts to feel really bad. And that's the thing, too. You know, if he does do something like a Ruination, or he starts duplicating these Undying, so now you're, like, stuffing up your field too much. You know, you're taking up attacks, follower spots for the remainder of the game, and you can only play so many units. So, oof, that Static Shock definitely feels pretty bad.
Yeah, very fortunate that Mathonical is able to get that out pre-combat. Does mean AnnieDesu's only going to attack with the Undyings, and the Vi is not going to be able to hit face, is going to have to take out that Solitary Monk. And Mathonical could finish off the Vi with a Mystic Shot, has the capabilities, and that would actually put AnnieDesu in... it's kind of weird to say a rough spot. I'm not convinced that he would be in a bad spot. His hand does look a little bit weak, but he does have all these Undyings, and their perceived value is not something I'm used to trying to check on.
I don't really know if there's a good way to figure out their perceived value. God, that's got to be some sort of math equation for that, right?
I'm pretty sure that AnnieDesu is pretty comfortably in the driver's seat of this game and this match. Should be able to pick it up in game number 4. A solid 3-1. Mathonical not able to pick up a win with the Heimer Vi, but game's not quite over yet, and Heimer, being the infinite value engine that he is, does always have that chance of comeback.
Yeah, and that's where I said that Ruination would come into play, right? So if Mathonical does try to, you know, sort of make a move here, play the Heimer to the field, start getting some of that advantage or some of that engine out there, you know, AnnieDesu can pretty much swing it for a next turn win with Ruination. But the thing with Ruination is you're always playing around it. If you know your opponent has Ruination, you're almost always playing around it. So I don't think Mathonical is really going to play into a big board as long as AnnieDesu has 9 or more mana.
I don't think Mathonical's actually really going to have a choice here. He's got to start lining up enough blockers for those Undyings, or he's going to die pretty soon. But I do want to touch on that Vi attack that he had just made, and I like that a lot. Not hitting the panic button, not trying to go for his opponent's Vi, instead realizing that he can choke a lot more value out of his own. And then kind of throws everything that I was just praising him for out the window, throwing the get excited down at the Vi.
And the Ethereal Remitter to make the Undying Oh my Jesus. Gosh. You want to talk about value? Oh my God.
Kato the Arm is going to be able to close this one out on the following turn. +3 attack and overwhelm. And this is a card that we've seen sort of come back into the forefront of the day 1 meta at the very least, as well as a couple of off-kilter decks like the Draven Lee Sin that we've seen a couple of times. Kato playing a big part in that, playing a big part in the Yeti decks from a couple of patches ago. Overall, once again, that 1 health buff or nerf made all the difference for this card. It used to be a 5/3. Now at a much more survivable stat line, he's made his way into the forefront of the meta, and he's going to pick up AnnieDesu the win here thanks to this overwhelming Undying.
Wow, that's a lot of damage. So that's exactly what we're talking about at the beginning of the game here, just getting these Undyings out so quickly. I'm pretty sure there's... I mean, he could have... Jesus, the lifesteal. I always forget the...
Spirit's Refuge.
Yeah, I always forget the name of that card for some reason, Spirit's Refuge. Yeah, he could have that to heal up a little bit, but even so, I don't think that's going to be enough for him to take the game here. Yep.
No, it looks like doesn't even have it, and I don't think I've seen AnnieDesu actually level his Ezreal with this deck yet. It's always been an Undying victory.
All right, guys, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed round 6. We're going to have, later on, probably tomorrow, we got round 7 and some of the top 8 action as well that we're going to be posting up. So hope you guys are looking forward to it. I know I am. Until next time, everybody stay healthy, stay positive. I hope shit just works for you, and peace out.